Welcome everyone to another live stream event here with the EdTech Collective. Today we are going to be chatting with some fantastic folks. I can't wait for everyone here to meet them, but an official title, how VCCS is making learning more social and engaging with Harmonize, which is by 42 Lines. We have multiple presenters, and when I say multiple, I mean multiple. We've got lots of them. So let's jump in and talk about who we have today and see all of their smiling faces. Hello, everyone. How are we? Lots of folks joining us out there on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Please make sure, Twitter, if you are watching, like, retweet, all of the things, subscribe, hit the bell, whatever they say out there in live stream land to make sure all of your friends and educators around the globe can also see this. We greatly appreciate it. It helps the vision of what we're trying to do here at Instructure. So let's talk about who we have first. We've got a few folks. Lauren is not presenting. I just noticed that in the notes. That's my fault. Lauren, see you later. As the person that drives this, I kind of know that, but we do have Lauren in kind of the background. We'll be answering questions in the chat. She's in marketing there at Harmonize by 42 Lines. Thank you, Lauren, for joining us. Really appreciate it. We have our main presenter, who is Marcus. Marcus is the CEO of Harmonize by 42 Lines. He'll be driving today as my ugly mug will get out of the stream very soon. We have Sherry, who's the director, teacher, and teaching and learning technologies at Virginia Community College System. Heather, the instructional designer, at Tidewater Community College, and Terry, the coordinator of educational technologies, Southside Virginia Community College. We're really going to talk about ways to increase student engagement with online and blended courses, and how Harmonize, who is one of our partners here at Instructure, this is a partnership live stream with them on how they're helping Virginia's community college make learning more social and engaging. So Marcus, take it away. I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Yeah, and I guess slight humbleness here of like, I'm actually not the main presenter. I'm just the guy driving the slideshow and occasionally doing the demo. So what I'd really like is to create a space where all of the other folks on the call can talk about what they've done. And then I will do some logistics backing up of helping with the demonstration of what that looks like in the real software, so we can get a feel for that. So what we're hoping to do is just run through some best practices of kind of the why VCCS chose to bring social into their learning environment. Let Sherry talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to hit on sort of three themes that are important for what we're trying to do with communities when we are learning, and how do we help instructors. And then we'll go through at the end a little bit of logistics of, if you're interested in what you saw here, we can set you up with a free pilot. But most of the focus is going to be on the other three folks with me here. We already went through the faces. He covered that, so I will browse over this and skip straight in and hand it off to Sherry, because she's been our main point of contact at VCCS, and she does a lot of research in this area and has a lot to say on it. So Sherry, I'll hand it over to you, and then pick up from there.
Good day to you, everyone. The Virginia Community College System obviously is located in Virginia. We're made up of 23 community colleges. We have a single instance of Canvas, and then we have 23 plus one sub-accounts. We can use all kinds of third-party tools in Canvas, and we've chosen to use Harmonize to make our interactions and engaging more effective for our faculty and our students. So the reason is that research shows us that students who feel connected to faculty and feel connected to other students, they perceive that they're learning more. And because they perceive that they're learning more, their chances of completion and doing well and re-enrolling the next semester are higher. So it was important for us to find an appropriate tool for interaction and engagement. Some of the challenges in front of us, students are not always interested in making community. So sometimes they do not like the dreaded threaded discussion. And what they really want is to see faculty focus on content and not community. Yet we know from the research, we know from asking students that they actually appreciate well-designed, well-developed engagement and interaction. Students are often concerned when they feel that the faculty member is absent. So Harmonize gives us a way for the faculty to be present in a very important way. And one of the important ways of engaging students in a way that they feel more connected, both as a community as well as with content, if we think of it as problem posing education, if we use Harmonize to post a question that students need to solve either together or individually, and then students are learning together rather than each one individually. And the one last comment that I want to make is that as we move more into high flex, the milestones that we'll be talking about in a little bit are a very important piece. We have students who may be taking the same course at the same time in the classroom, from a remote location live or remote asynchronously, and milestones will help to keep all the students on track. And so we truly believe that learning is social and that engagement will help to improve student outcomes. And we think Harmonize is the way to get there.
Excellent. And I should have asked this as we're rolling in. Did someone other than me want to cover this slide? I will take it then. So what we did is we did a pilot with several, I think 7, 8, 10 of the VCCS community colleges, and then gathered some data on how it worked. And so we were seeing a lot of increase in things that I think were interesting. We saw a lot more multimedia used, students expressing themselves in different ways. So at Southside, saw 43% of student posts actually included some type of media, which is a different way for them to express themselves. So it's not just I'm writing text, it's more like how do I interact with my peers on the internet usually? Do I use memes? Do I use videos? Do I embed things? What does that look like? And how do we relate better to our peers using whatever expression type we want? And then with some logistics and some time saving things, which we'll touch on more at the end, a lot of folks were using auto grading for when they were just trying to get at that participation. So we were freeing up instructor time to be able to let them focus more on the teaching side of things and not having to do, simple spreadsheet calculation or checking in and reporting on students to see are they participating. Instead, the software handles that for them. Harmonize takes care of that, and the Tidewater instructors use that 41% of the time. And you use that when appropriate, like in terms of participation grading, great, or you shift into more of a qualitative mode and give them a grade. Both are available. We're also focused on some of the integrity. So 100% of the posts were actually using Turnitin integration to be able to make sure authenticity was there. I was surprised at that level of usage. It's great. Turned it on institution-wide, and everyone was using it. And then when looking at the milestones feature, which is I think one of a pretty often requested feature inside of discussions, think of it as multiple due dates. In a particular discussion topic, Tidewater was using multiple due dates to kind of drive earlier engagement for students, to say, hey, don't wait until the last minute. You're not going to interact with your peers if you wait to the last minute and throw something up there and then leave. So let's set a deadline early. Let's get you into the conversation early, put some content out there, and then have you come back a second time or a third time to be able to engage. And they saw anywhere between 2 times as many posts, 5 times as many comments when they're looking at using those features, because it's a little bit of a carrot and a stick. Like it's the, hey, you might be graded on this, come in and participate early, but then it sort of takes on a life of its own and the students start interacting more. Kind of getting at what Sherry was talking about in terms of sometimes the students are like, ugh, community building, but once they build that community, they really appreciated it, even if they can't quantify that was the thing that made it better. Any comments from the VCCS crew on this that you wanted to add, or was that good in terms of what I covered there?
That was good.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to give a little bit of description of what Harmonize does, and then I'm going to turn it over to the VCCS crew to talk about the specific thing that they're after and what they used in the different use cases. And then we'll bounce back and forth between them describing the why, and sorry for my cast waving around. This is something I'm not quite used to yet, but new. So they'll describe the why, and then I'll go and demo a little bit for them to show kind of how it could be done in the tool. So what we're looking at is that communication between students, between students and faculty. How can we make that easier, richer? How can we make it more what everyone has come to expect on the internet? But let's bring that inside of the online classroom so that they can express themselves as they would out in the normal world, but do that inside their classroom. So they can do that with video. They can do that with images, embedding things, and we do it in a way that tries to make it easier to discover what kind of content is going on. So you can see it's more of a card layout. It's sort of more visually appealing when you first come in. You can see what the individual students are doing, and you can choose where you want to participate in the class. And we do this for discussion forums. Then we have private chat. We have Q&A forums. We have polling and all kinds of different tools so that as an instructor, instructional designer, or as an instructor, you can go in and pick what you want to do for your class and then use that to engage your students. And the students can pick how they want to express themselves as well. So different learner types can express themselves in different ways. So it comes across as three main themes we're looking for. It's first and foremost, can we increase student engagement? Can we get students in more frequently? Can they get them interacting more richly, more deeply, or more broadly, whatever your goal is to be able to do that? So we're focused on doing that by making it much easier to use, to do some of the more expressive types of media. We're giving all kinds of tools to the instructors to help set expectations in terms of multiple due dates. We're giving, all I mentioned, the QA and the polls and the chat. Whatever type of tool you need as an instructor or an instructional designer, we're trying to provide that so that you can determine what's right for your classroom. And then you get into some of what students can do in terms of social media tagging. They can tag each other, get notifications going so that they can be drawn back into that classroom as we're going through. Then we're going to touch on a couple themes of like, how do you do that, but have it be inclusive? And how does all of this different technology that I'm talking about help pull in different learner types, but also how do you do that without leaving anybody behind in terms of ADA accessibility, making sure that you're kind of bridging that gap and walking that line of, well, if I'm doing videos, well, did I leave anybody behind? No, we auto caption them for you so you don't have to worry about someone who can't consume video content. And how do we allow you to meet them on their phone? Maybe they don't have a laptop because they're in an area where there's not a lot of access to computers. Or can you set up small groups? How does all of this tie together so that you're making sure you're not leaving anyone behind? And then finally, how do we do that in a way that one of our main goals is make that easier, but save instructors time? Because the more time we can give back to the instructor, the more time they can spend teaching, and the better that is for the students. And so that is one of our driving goals as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to talk about student engagement.
Hi everyone. Just give me 1 second because, of course, I had it all geared up to open and it wasn't there. Hi, I am Dr. Heather Brown. I am an instructional designer at Tidewater Community College in Virginia. And when we think of increasing student engagement and getting students engaged, we often think of their motivation, right, to learn and to grow. And by leveraging technology as a tool for learning, participation, and engagement, we foster learners' ability to think critically and actively engage in their learning process. In a seminal work of Michael Moore in the late 80s, he started talking about the need to start really looking at distance education and actually 3 types of interaction. And Marcus has already hit on these. It's the student to instructor, the student to student, and the student to content. And Harmonize helps in all 3 of those interactions. So for the student instructor, research has shown, I believe Sherry even mentioned this, that this type of interaction is essential by educators and highly desirable by students. By interacting with students and providing feedback, you as the instructor can stimulate your students' interest and motivation. Also, this type of interaction is critical when it comes to regular and substantive interaction, which we'll talk about a little later on. Terry will hit on this as well. and more on how more on how Harmonize supports this in the presentation as well. So, and how does Harmonize support the student and instructor interaction? It's very easy, user-friendly interface for both the faculty and the student. And in a survey that we conducted with TCC faculty, one of the faculty members stated, "It's given me a chance to be more interactive with students in the discussions. It's also given me the opportunity to see clearly the discussion threads where they're not constantly stacked on top of each other. It's very clearly delineated." Another goal as an educator is to encourage student to content and especially student to student engagement to allow for deeper discussions to happen. Student to content takes place within Harmonize when students engage with the discussion prompt, and faculty have the ability to insert their own multimedia in their discussion posts. However, the real magic happens when we get the student to student interaction and engagement. Studies find that this type of interaction leads to greater learning and high course satisfaction. So Harmonize supports this by having the ability to set multiple due dates. We've touched on that a little bit already, and milestones. So instead of the status quo discussion boards that you find, say, in the different LMSs, Harmonize allows you to set an early due date within the first day or two of an initial post. Then you can set a second due date. You can even set a third due date. You can set multiple due dates for one discussion. So, and it sends out reminders, which is awesome, to your students. Hey, don't forget, you've got a second due date coming up. So it keeps the students actively engaged in the discussion. And also as educators, we do want to build a sense of community with our students, especially in the online environment. And one way Harmonize supports this is through tagging peers in a post, giving peers a thumbs up reaction on a reply, and the notifications that it sends to your peer if you do a thumbs up or if you tag somebody in a post. And last but not least, as educators, we want to encourage students' participation and motivation by using different engaging formats such as video, multimedia. Harmonize supports this by having the ability for students to post videos. They can post images. They have annotation capabilities. Faculty have annotation capabilities. There's a chat, there's polling, and there's a Q&A. That supports the three distinct student interaction for student engagement. Next slide. We're on the next slide.
Yep, you're up with Johnny.
Yes, with Johnny. This is Johnny Carney. She's one of our adjunct faculty members. She teaches information literacy, which is fully online. She had 2 sections last semester, and she loves Harmonize because the discussion was visible to her. The due dates were clear. The reaction features she found really livened up her discussions. She walked away thinking there wasn't going to be a lot of reactions with the thumbs up or a lot of tagging of the students to student. But she said she came back and she was amazed at how much interaction had already happened within her discussion. She was really excited about that. And like I said, it posts notifications. It helps the discussion to keep going.
Cool. I think it's my role now to demo a little bit of that. So I mentioned my broken hand, so you're going to have to bear with me as I jump around a little bit here and sometimes type slowly. But what I want to first cover is that this fits inside of Canvas. Like, as our Canvas partnership, our goal is to make it seamless. So the idea is your students aren't going to have to go to another system. They're not going to have to do another login, and we lace into your course. Generally, we get inserted in as modules. You can do assignments. You can do a left menu item if you want to put discussions in there. But our idea is, where do you want us to be in your course? And we'll be there. So I have one set up here to do an introduction to the class. It loads up in standard place. You have your Speedgrader, your assignment settings, etc. One of the first things I do, and let me just jump over here, is to load it into a new window because I like a lot of space. So when I'm looking at what Harmonize has, I kind of hinted at this a little bit in a screenshot, but you can see we're in a card view. I've actually rolled up the instructions because I want to focus on the students first. When I come into Harmonize, I can immediately see what my peers are posting. If they chose to use media in their post, it would highlight that. Otherwise, it's going to pull their profile picture in. And the idea is that I can come in, I can see what's going on in the class. I can see the notifications of what's new comments perhaps, entirely new content, which this one is not relative to the class, but my head of product was testing something with their children, it looks like. But the idea is like I can come in and discover content in a way that I don't have to get overwhelmed. And then normally they would see the instructions. So let me bounce back up a little bit and show you what the instructions look like. The idea here is that we want to give you as the instructor tools to configure things. So let me start with the multiple due dates. First and foremost, I have 2 due dates set up on this class. By June 27th, which is pretty far away, you have to make 1 post. And by June 30th, I want you to have made 2 comments. This is the minimum we recommend for this. If you write, the more you actually ask of your students, the more they will do above and beyond. But it allows the students to know, like, for example, my son with ADHD has to know I have a deadline, I have to do it, puts it in a visual format, like she said, sends notifications to them and lets them know we need them to participate. And then they can see really clearly what is required of them. So I chose to record a video to introduce myself. And tell what I wanted from them. And then I broke it into the different requirements I had for them in terms of, first, I want to make you a post. I want you to do these things in the post. And then I want you to go do these things on your classmates' post. So it's sort of prescriptively to start with, priming that pump of laying out for them what we want to see. And then I embedded some content because the idea is like you should be able to pull in any resources. If it's a YouTube video, we will automatically pull in a display for you. If it's a website, we will do that for you as well. And then the students can choose to post. And then all the way up here at the top, there's this notification bell, which shows you what's going on. They mentioned tagging. One of my students tagged me already in a comment. It shows up here. It emails it to me. And the same thing happens for students as we're going through, so that they can really come into the class, interact, and see who's been talking about them, see who's been commenting on their posts, and really get that back and forth feeling going. And then when they look at any one of these, they can actually flip it over, and we call it flipping the card over, and see what content was written. This one was by me, it wasn't by a student. But you can see I tagged a couple folks. I included a bunch of images here. I embedded a link, and you can see it actually automatically pulled in a preview for me. So the idea is like, let's give them the ability to express themselves however they want, because that's going to allow them to be more engaged with their fellow classmates. I'm going to do some more demos later, but I'm going to jump back in now to cover more on the inclusive side and hand this over, and then I'll do a little bit of demonstration on that as well.
Okay, that's me. I'm Terry Milroy. I'm the coordinator of education technologies at Southside Virginia Community College. And so I serve the role as both instructional designer and run the online learning systems, including Canvas. So I have found, not only for myself, because I'm also an adjunct instructor, but for my faculty, that Harmonize has provided us with so many interesting abilities in terms of collaboration and inclusion. Obviously, DEI is a big topic in higher education right now. And as the headline on the slide shows, our studies have shown that students who learn in isolation, our online students especially, who learn without peer and instructor support regularly, are 1.5 times more likely to fail than those who participate in active learning with peers. And we put discussions out there, but sometimes it's very hard for students, especially students who are isolated, to know, how do I interact with a big class? If there's 40, 50, however many students in a big section, how do I know who to respond to? Do I respond to the longest post, the shortest post? Do I have to respond to all posts? But Harmonize gives students the ability to respond to an assigned group when you have a big class like that. so that you can narrow down the focus of students and so that students can actually develop relationships within those groups and feel more comfortable as they go along, which I'm going to talk about more here in a second. But you can also, in a smaller class, give students the ability to respond to everyone. They can pick who they want to respond to. They can respond to everyone. And in fact, sometimes it's good to see in a small class that they respond to everyone. And Harmonize actually gives you tools to see what percentage of their group or of the class that they have interacted with. We also know, though, that struggling students find it much easier to make comments and ask questions, sometimes from peers than from their instructor, especially in one of those larger classes where there's not as much direct interaction in the classroom between the student and the instructor. Peer support sometimes and peer comments sometimes help our students learn as much as anything else. So again, these groups that you can assign students to and Harmonize give students who are struggling a support structure. It gives them someone to discuss content with that maybe they didn't understand, or to make comments that they wouldn't make to a wider group and feel more comfortable doing so. And this actually promotes understanding and learning, and especially higher level critical thinking skills that we want our students to develop, because they're more likely to discuss and comment and ask questions again in these small groups. Collaborative learning is another important issue for higher education and for our students to really understand and develop these higher level thinking skills. And that requires multiple things from our students. It requires them to first assess knowledge of their peers based on their own understanding, and that's some of our lower order thinking skills. But then they also have to use much higher level skills to provide analytical and creative responses that integrate the information that they're learning and apply it to the prompt or whatever you've provided them with. So while all discussion tools do to some extent promote these skills, the tools that Harmonize provides us actually give students a wider array of things with which to demonstrate their knowledge, and especially helps diverse learners to better understand both their peers' interpretations of content and for them to give their own interpretation of content. You know, in higher ed, we're seeing a much wider array of diverse learners. And the array of tools that Harmonize gives us gives all of these different learners with different special abilities the ability to pick where their strength lies and respond in that way. Inclusive learning for these diverse learners also requires that we give different methods of teaching so that all of them feel seen and feel safe in the online classroom. And Harmonize gives us the tools as instructors to present things in multiple methods so that content is displayed in ways that can target each of our learners differently. That includes things like videos, things like images and annotated media, and as well as text, so that students come in and they see something that they relate to and where they feel comfortable learning. And our inclusivity also necessitates having content delivered and graded, framed in such a way so that different learning preferences are embraced and students see clear avenues for their own success. Because success and retention for diverse learners is a big issue. And we want to make sure that when our students are asked to engage with content, that we give them the ability to respond in a way where they feel like they can continue to be successful, and we don't lose them because they feel like they are being excluded from the ability to put their best foot forward. So if we can go on, there we go. This is actually a screenshot of a post from one of my classes, and it is demonstrating several of the things that help with some of this inclusivity. First of all, you can see that this student has posted a couple of memes, and this has given them the ability to express themselves in a way that doesn't require them to type everything in an essay format. Some discussion platforms are pretty stagnant, and students who are not good writers feel excluded because they feel like they can't adequately express what they're trying to say. So my students in this government class that's highlighted here actually not only pick memes from the internet, they actually create their own memes by taking images and annotating them here in the Harmonize software. And then for me as the instructor, I can also see how many students reacted and commented right there on the screen, what percentage of students this particular learner engaged with, so that I know if they're actually feeling included, if they are actually collaborating with the students that they're working with. And if not, then I have the ability to go in and address that right away.
All right, let me jump in and try to demo some of that. So in terms of, let me go to my bigger window. In terms of how a lot of this stuff works, she was talking about the small group functionality and how do you draw students out. We support that at multiple levels, and I'm not going to actually demo that. I'm just going to cover them because it's hard to demo small groups of students working together. But you can do small groups. You can do one-on-one with the instructor and the student if you're actually trying to do reflections, or you can do the entire class. We support whatever you configure inside of Canvas. If you already have groups set up for the rest of your class, we will pull that information in and use it to help create those groups. As well as if you're really trying to draw people out on a sensitive topic, we actually allow anonymous posting. So if you really have a shy class, you can just flip it into anonymous mode, let them start expressing themselves without having to attach their personal profile to what they're saying, and give them a little more freedom there. And if you do couple that with what Canvas offers in terms of anonymous grading, you could actually remove bias from the cycle entirely and be able to grade if you choose without ever seeing which student it is until it actually shows up in the gradebook. So we're trying to support whatever it needs to draw those students out. A couple of the topics she talked about, I want to just maybe create a post to show you what that looks like so you can understand how I would go about doing something like that. So pretty straightforward. Click on Create Post. It's going to pull up an editor that allows me to start with a subject, which I'm going to type slowly. I love so many typos. Jazz. And I can tag my classmates, which is something they touched on. So I can actually tag James. I can tag Dara if I wanted to. I also can use some of the standards that people are used to in terms of at mentioning people. They can do the same thing in line. Now I'm going to switch into a text-to-speech mode. So if I wanted to, I could put a bunch of text here using text-to-speech. This is a feature of my Mac, not of Harmonize itself, but I just want to demonstrate some text without having to have you watch me type so painfully. So I can always do text. That's straightforward. That's easy. But really where it comes into richer is like all the different types of ways we can either drag files in to do things. We can go ahead and record video. We can do audio as well. If someone doesn't want to appear on video, maybe they don't want the background of their house seen because they don't want to share that, they can do audio. But we allow them to, use my camera. We allow them to record straight in line so that there's no complication over how they're going to do this. They just click start recording and we are rolling. I can introduce myself to the class. I can talk about what jazz means to me because this is a jazz class I'm in. I can talk about how I don't know very much about jazz at all. Whatever it is, I can do this in audio. I can do this in video. I can do it in text. I can drag images in and I can drag different YouTube videos. I'm going to grab a URL here to show you. So as I slowly copy and paste. If I'm actually in the editor, much like you do on Facebook, if I'm actually going ahead and putting the URL in, we're going to pull a preview of that URL in so that students can see what it is and decide if they want to click on it, as well as screen readers. So if someone's student is coming through and they're using a screen reader, we don't want the screen reader to be like www.inmytimes.com. We want them to be able to say, oh, news about jazz, including commentary. You can see that, well, not on this one, but because it's still processing, but we are in the background auto captioning that video so that if someone does choose to switch to video format, you're not leaving someone behind who is also focused on trying to listen or trying to read or anything along those lines. And then she talked about annotation. And I think this one is where it gets really interesting, is that one of the things that is difficult in a classroom is when someone gives you a piece of content, how do you give them feedback on that content? Both as students giving feedback on their own stuff, instructors giving feedback, and we have a whole slew of tools for annotation, both for images and videos, and coming up with PDFs real soon. And the idea being that I can go ahead, pull this video up, I can start playing it. So I'm going to pause there. I can actually go ahead and add a timeline marker on this. I'm going to be like, oh, at this point, you said something really offensive. I'm like, right here, and I can add in some comments. Sorry, my finger is going really slowly. But I can also, if I wanted to, let's say this was a sign language video, I could actually draw on the individual slide. So I could come over here and be like, or I could just be like, oh, your thumb looks like it hurts. I'm glad you're doing video or something along those lines. This is very useful when you're trying to give feedback on a presentation or anything that is more time-based. And then we do the same thing for images. Like if they upload a meme or want to create a meme, they can do the same thing here. And it allows more of a rich interaction around the content itself. I'm going to go ahead and save this and close it out. The idea is like there are so many ways you as instructors need to be able to connect with your students. And we try to make those as easy as we possibly can so that you're not having to fight the technology. You can schedule Zoom meetings straight in here. You can run polls. You can, like I said, drag and drop files, and you can even do code editing and such like that if you're teaching a more technology-based course. So that was a wide range of like, how do you author content in a bunch of different ways? Just trying to envision like, what does that look like for the student and how do they express themselves? Jump back over now to presentation land and rolling into Save Instructors time.
All right, that's me again.
Yes.
Sorry,
I guess I should call out your name, shouldn't I?
No, couldn't unmute. So some things that save instructors time, there's a lot of things actually in Harmonize that help save instructors time. The multiple due dates for me are just an amazing tool because you don't have to wonder if students did their first post when they were supposed to, if they did their responses to their peers or their reactions or whatever it is you're requiring when they're supposed to. It's right there in Canvas in the Speedgrader when you go into grade. It also helps to not have to chase students down because they get reminders for each of those due dates. You don't have to send reminders out, or if you happen to comment, if you're using discussions as an RSI feature, if you happen to comment on student posts, you don't need to go tell them, hey, I said something, you need to go respond to it because they get a notification. Again, the media annotation is great. You can annotate students' media yourselves. They annotate media so that they are clearer about what they're trying to convey, especially those students who feel more comfortable with video or image responses for some of their posts. You want to make sure that they are very clear as to what point they're trying to make. And this not only gives them the opportunity to be clear, but it also gives you the opportunity to respond in a way that meets what they're doing. And then there's also the visibility settings, which we'll show on the next slide, but the visibility settings give you the opportunity to set a bunch of different parameters for each individual post and create all sorts of different opportunities for engagement with your students. But once you get the hang of it, there are so many features. It's actually much easier as an instructor to enjoy the discussion process more, and I feel like my students enjoy it more as well. I love being able to gauge things at a glance, and also something not on the slide, but Turnitin. Having that in the discussion is great. I teach a lot of high school learners who are doing dual enrollment classes. And even if I'm not trying to check for plagiarism, even if this is a very low stakes event, I can give them the opportunity to learn from their mistakes by having the Turnitin report there for them. And that allows them to be more successful on the high stakes activities because they've already had feedback from Turnitin multiple times before they get to that high stakes event. For larger classes, as we'll show you on the next slide, you can actually do a student facilitator, and that helps to not only take the burden off of you in terms of time, but it also keeps students talking because they've got a peer prodding them along. And also engagement insights, which I think Marcus is going to talk about after I'm done, to keep track of who's falling behind and get them re-engaged. So this is the editing area for instructors. And the thing that I really want to focus on is some of these time-saving topics. You can see that you can check Turnitin there. You can check the anonymous settings that Marcus mentioned before. And you can also make sure that you have the visibility settings set. One thing that I haven't done, but I am building to in my fall classes this year, is using Harmonize early in the class as something like a journal for students to start out with, creating visibility settings that are private between the student and me, so that they are more comfortable not only posting, but also commenting or asking questions on posts, so that they learn how to build their academic skills and their academic writing. I'm hoping that by starting this way, I can build their confidence, and then I will move them into small group visibility, and then maybe, depending upon the size of the class, visible to the entire class as a whole. I also mentioned a moment ago that you definitely want to check the engagement insights box, because that's going to show you student behavior. And of course, again, with regular and substantive interaction, RSI requires us to re-engage students as soon as they stop participating. So having this is super helpful, not only to promote student success and retention, but also to help us as instructors remain compliant with federal requirements, and to give us one more tool in our arsenal when it comes to students who are falling behind, because especially students who would otherwise be maybe not quite as confident, not confident because of their diverse learning styles or whatever is going on with them, we do often have to prod in more than one way. And so having the harmonized tools is a great advantage when you're trying to get students re-engaged and get them successfully through the class.
Yeah, and engagement insights in RSI. I don't know if many folks are familiar with RSI. She covered it some. It's not something to be super stressed about for the most part. It's like, are you teaching online? Are you engaging your students in multiple ways? How often are you doing that, et cetera? But the one that I found most daunting, and then what I'm going to talk about here with engagement insights, is the idea that you have to monitor engagement in your class. And that's hard to do without some decent tools. How do you know which student has faded away? Are you comparing a list of all your students to who's posted and trying to understand, oh, wait, I haven't heard from Bobby in a while. And so we built a tool and we only show this to instructors, we don't show this to students, but to actually compare all the students to each other, and based on peer activity in your class, give you a list of potential risks for students that you might want to check out. So the idea being like, hey, if you're not coming into the class as much, if you're not as connected to your peers as much, let's give you a list on the left that labels people as high, medium, or low risk as our engine sees it. Give you a plain English version of what the concern is and how long it's been going on, so you don't have to be a data geek to try to figure out what we're talking about. But the idea is like, what are our concerns and where are they getting better at? And then give you a way really quickly to reach out to them, either directly in the discussion, chat, we'll load up their email address for you, whatever it takes for you to be able to get to that student and say, hey, what's up? Do you need help? Did you have a thought on this? Or go straight into the discussion, tag them and say like, hey, Flora, what did you think about this? Oh, the instructor just tagged me. I got to come back in and answer the instructor's question. And then we record all that in an outreach log so that you can always go back and be like, well, what did I do with this student? I'm supposed to be monitoring engagement. I did try to reach out. They didn't come back. That sucks. Or they did come back. That's amazing. And how do we keep track of that for you? And then show the same thing for students who are on track. We do offer the actual data if you're more of a data geek. If this makes your eyes glaze over a little bit, don't worry, it's not necessary. But the idea is there's a lot of different aspects of things we're checking. Peer connectedness, what kind of content are they writing? How much are they writing? When are they writing it? Are they meeting their requirements for what you're expecting them to post? And then being able to tell which of those factors is dipping below their peers or above their peers. And that peer thing is important because we're not trying to say, 3 posts is good. No, it's like if everybody made 3 posts, that's the norm. And if someone made 0 or 1, that's below the norm. And we should highlight that for you. So it's easy for you as the instructor to say, got it. All right, I'm just going to hit up Flora, see what's going on. So let me dive into some demo of the Speedgrader. So I'm back here in Canvas. If I launch Speedgrader, you should be pretty familiar with Speedgrader. We don't want you to have to learn new tools to grade. But the idea is like, what information can we give you and summarize up so that you can see everything about that student as a glance? Let me wait for Speedgrader to load. Here we go. So super familiar, right? Speedgrader across the top, what you're doing here on the left, and I'm waiting for things to load. As soon as I started running StreamYard, everything slowed down and it made me really sad. Live demos. Well, that doesn't
This
actually
is when I
load, then
should
I'm going
have
to have a hard
the
time talking about
waiting,
it.
the elevator music.
Well, let me pivot a little bit,
music.
and I will go look at an activity report, which is the same thing.
Marcus, can you hear me?
And see.
Can you hear me, Marcus?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said this is when I should have the elevator
Oh,
music. Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, go to the Instructure tool, and then all of a sudden we have to wait because your internet's slow.
Wow.
No, yeah, I tried a couple more times. If we don't get to it, we'll just talk a little bit about it. But I know that that is something that comes up a lot in the chat. It's come up a lot in the comments about how useful that integration is between Speedgrader and your tool.
Okay, let me see. Let me give it a quick reload. Oh, wait, it came. Awesome. All right. All right. So moving on as if nothing happened. So Speedgrader here will go ahead and load a view from you from Harmonize, and it will summarize up what the student has actually done. So you can see here it dropped right in on the first student. I can see that Laverne completed her milestones. I can see that I actually had auto grading set up for this. I assigned 50 points to the first milestone and 50 points to the second one. Laverne did both of them. She got 100%. We auto sent that to the gradebook for you. So if you're just doing participation grading, you don't have to do anything else here. So fantastic. However, this is where Terry was talking about how does this look for the different types of things. Like not only is it important that what they posted and who did they comment on, so you can see what they're doing for class participation, how much did they provoke in terms of students, how much of the other students' content have they read, because maybe they are only posting once or twice, but they're reading 100% of the content. That's pretty amazing. It's good to know. And you can get an overview for what they look like and then add additional comments just as you would in Speedgrader. But then I want to jump over to, she had mentioned the Turnitin integration. I had James here submit the Gettysburg. Oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? Because it's running a little slow. All right. Let me come over here and do it. Or maybe it's just my computer in general. Yeah, maybe it's just my computer in general. James loaded. Okay. So you can see here we put the Turnitin score right there for you to see. And if I click on this Turnitin integration, it'll actually jump me straight to Turnitin and show me why 98% of his stuff was plagiarized. And the idea being that like the student sees this. Oh, I agree to the Turnitin parameters. Obviously, I hadn't clicked on Turnitin on this computer before. But once you accept the end user license from Turnitin, which you only have to do once, it will actually summarize what happened here. So the Gettysburg Address, he tried to claim he wrote that, and it's going to highlight that. And the important part is it shows this to James before I ever have to see it as the instructor. So quite clearly, let me not say the Canvas was slow because it took so long for this to load that it must be my machine that is having struggles. So don't blame Canvas for the Speedgrader slowness to load because this is Turnitin and it's also loading slowly. So, but the idea is like let the students see the Turnitin score, let them see what they plagiarized, let them fix it in a low stakes environment, and let them know that that's just not something that's okay. So learn from it, roll on. You as the instructor hopefully never have to even do anything about it because they saw it, they fixed it, they started participating in the class in an authentic way. And then just one last thing to highlight, I wanted to show you where the student facilitation actually appeared, although my computer's running so slow that we'll see if that actually happens or not. I wonder if well, I won't start wondering why my computer's running slow. You guys don't need to hear that. Well, I'm not going to highlight the student facilitation. I'm just going to come back to the presentation and gosh, even if it'll load, and just summarize up what we're hitting on here. So, we're focused on where can we meet the students where they're at? What kind of tools can we give you as the instructor to pull them in? How can we do that in a way that's inclusive? And how we can do that in a way that saves you time so that you have more time to teach. So if it will actually switch to the next slide. if you are interested in this is where I go into a little bit of a sales pitch versus a demonstration pitch. We're currently offering free pilots for this. And Sherry, I know we didn't give you a free pilot. That was a long time ago. I'm sorry. But we're now offering free pilots. It's a new program we're doing to where if you want to give this a try in fall, you can. Unlimited users, unlimited students. Just get a feel for what it's like, give it a big try in your classes. If you're interested in that, you can go to harmonize.42lines.net/canvas-pilot, or just Google Harmonize discussions and come to our page, contact us, and we'll get you set up. So happy to do that.
Thanks, Marcus. Really appreciate you. We have put the link directly in the comments section, so if you're kind of looking for that, it should be buried there somewhere. We appreciate everybody joining. Boy, we had a crowd today. We had a big crowd today for this live stream. Maybe people are hungry for more content online. You never know. Sherry, Terry, Heather, I appreciate you guys so much for joining as well on the partner live stream today. Marcus, as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for presenting. As always, you'll see us here wherever you find these fine live streams, whether it's on Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. We'll be happy to see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Peace out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.